You can use the CLI installer to perform a silent deployment of a vCenterServer appliance on an ESXi host or vCenterServer instance. This is today's lab setup. In this lab session, I will install vCenterServer on ESXi1. The CLI deployment process includes downloading the vCenterServer installer on a network virtual machine or physical server. I'm using Windows-based physical server to running the deployment command. Before start, you need to download VMware vCenterServer appliance ISO image from VMware Customer Connect portal. If you plan to assign a static IP address and an FQDN as a system name in the network settings of the appliance, verify that you have configured the forward and reverse DNS records for the IP address. This is the IP details of today's lab setup. Let's join with screencast. Mount the ISO image to the client machine from which you want to deploy the appliance. Navigate to the VCSA CLI installer directory and open the template subfolder. In this lab session, I will install a new vCenterServer. So select the install subdirectory. This directory has the minimum configuration parameters for all deployment options. I'm selecting embedded VCSA on ESXi.json file that contains the minimum configuration parameters required for the deployment of a vCenterServer appliance on an ESXi host. Copy the deployment templates from the install subfolder to your workspace. I will copy template to E drive. In a text editor, open the template file. I will use Notepad++ as my text editor. Fill in the values for the required configuration parameters. Before starting, I'm logging into the target ESXi host. In ESXi section, you need the IP address or FQDN of the target ESXi host on which you want to deploy the appliance. Insert the password of the root user on the target ESXi host. Then enter the name of the network to which to connect the appliance. In Data Store section, insert the name of data store where you want to store the configuration files and virtual disks of the appliance. In Appliance section, set to True to deploy the appliance with thin virtual disks. Select the size of the appliance. I will set the size is set to tiny. Then insert VM name for the appliance. Now Configuration Network section. First select the IP family and IP mode. Then insert the FQDN of vCenter and IP address for the appliance. In other sections, insert the details about prefix, gateway, and DNS server IP address. In OS subsection, insert a password for the root user of the appliance operating system. Then you can insert NTP server IP details. Optionally, you can use the Time Tools sync set as true for VMware Tools time synchronization. This option can be ignored if you set NTP servers. In this lab session, I'm using VMware tools for time synchronization. Set SSL enable as false to disable SSH administrator login to the appliance. In SSO section, you need to add the single sign-on password and domain name. Save edited JSON file. You can use the CLI installer to perform deployment of a vCenterServer appliance. You can run the CLI deployment from a Windows, Linux, or Mac machine that is in the network on which you want to deploy the appliance. I will use Windows Client computer to run the CLI deployment. Navigate to the VCSA CLI installer subdirectory based on operating system. In this session, vCSA CLI installer in FDVD drive. I'm selecting Win32 directory because of this lab running the deployment on Windows OS. Now you need to run vcsa deploy install.exe file. Use this command to run the deployment. This argument will confirms your acknowledgement of VMware Customer Experience Improvement Program participation. Then accepts the end-user license agreement. This argument will skips the SSL verification for ESXi connections. Then insert the path to the JSON file. Installation process started. You can verify deployment tasks are running on the ESXi host. Installation process completed. If you need, you can read the log file information at the below location. This is the newly installed vCenterServer. Now you can access to vCenterServer using IP address of FQDN. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you found this tutorial helpful and informative. If you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more helpful tech tutorials. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.